Hey guys, it's Kay from KS Anonymous, and I am back today with another episode of r/PettyRevenge, my brother and his alarm clock. So, I am a very light sleeper. I will wake up from someone opening my door. This makes sleeping in sometimes really difficult. My brother, on the other hand, is a heavy sleeper, which makes it that he doesn't always hear his alarm go off. Since my room is next to his, I do wake up from his alarm. Doesn't matter if it's only whistling and bird noises, I wake up from it. This particular day, we were woken up at 9:30 by my father, and normally this means we have to get out of bed within 15 minutes, but my father had to go out for work. He's been working from home, but sometimes needs to go to the office for a more practical meeting where he can discuss certain things with his colleagues. My mom works in healthcare, so she was also out. That meant we both weren't getting out of bed soon. Except his alarm clock went off at 9:35, and instead of turning it off, he snoozed it for 45 minutes long. Every time I almost fell asleep again, his alarm would go off, and he was sleeping straight through it. Every single time. So after 45 minutes, I decided sleeping in was not going to happen and got up to shower. I grabbed my JBL box, JBL Extreme 2, and got into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned the volume up full blast. He came knocking on the door, just barely got through the noise of the box, so I paused it. He found it very annoying, which was weird because when I complained about the alarm, I was being an a-hole. So after showering, I put the box at my door open, pointed at his door, and kept blasting my own music. And he hates my music. So that was my petty revenge. For the rest of the day, I was pretty tired, but it was worth it. He really needs to figure out a more efficient way of waking up somehow, because that's annoying. I feel your pain. My sister could sleep through World War III. I've once had to walk into her room and unplug her clock because it was going off for so long. I had a migraine and already called into work. Her alarm went off at about 6:30 a.m. It continued until about 7:05 when I just couldn't take it anymore. I stormed in and grabbed it off her dresser, unplugging it in the process, and tossed it onto her bed. She barely woke up and then fell back asleep almost immediately. Then I was the a-hole because she was late to work and it was somehow my fault. Neighbor's barking dog. Was living in one of the original single wides while building our house. There was a good amount of snow on the ground and it was about 3 degrees at night. Every sound was amplified. Neighbor's dog was an outside dog with a heated house. It barked all the time. If a dog barks for 5 minutes or longer, you can log it. When you turn the log in, a judge can charge them $50 per incident. It was up to 20 to 30 logs a day, lasting 5 minutes to a couple hours. I wasn't even home all day. She was super poor, and I didn't want to go this route. After 3 weeks of my husband and I getting no sleep, we had begun to fight a lot, and I wasn't getting anything done because of being sleep deprived. I was daydreaming of tackling the dog and putting a shock collar on it. In the end, every time the dog barked at night, I would put on a sweatshirt, crunch, crunch, crunch my way to her house, and bang on the door until she answered. What? Your dog's barking. Oh, I didn't hear him. I turn and leave. But the third time she answered her door, your dog's barking. Why do you keep doing this? It's not my dog, it's yours. If I'm up because it's barking, so are you. I haven't slept in over 3 weeks. This is how neighbors get murdered. It took her 4 nights to break and do something about her dog. A couple times I had to pound on the door for several minutes with my breath freezing in my lungs, but it was worth it. This is how neighbors get murdered. That's terrible. Loud neighbor playing music can no longer have his fun. Last July, a new neighbor across the street moved in. He talked to us in perfect English about a parking spot the first day. A week into moving, he parks his truck on his front lawn and plays his bass so loud it shakes our house 200 feet away. We asked him to turn down his music and he said, "No speak English," despite speaking English to us a week prior. I speak Spanish as well, but he turned deaf when I spoke in Spanish. Our dog developed horrible anxiety because of this music, and we have spent $300 on vet visits, dog trainers, and pet meds trying to treat his anxiety. Our poor dog lost 20 pounds and was emaciated. 68 pounds for a Great Pyrenees is horrible due to anxiety, and it's been a source of sorrow and sadness to see him go through this. Since then, it's 4 nights a week for 6 hours at a time, sometimes until 4 a.m., of unbearable torture of constant bass. While the bass is turned up, the rest of the music is actually quite low, but bass travels the farthest. It's honestly torture, inescapable, painfully loud music that there is no way to tune it out. I bought active noise canceling headphones, and at least it reduces it, but I can still feel it in my body. In my city, the cops no longer enforce misdemeanors due to a city policy. We called his landlord. They're not going to do anything about it. With no avenue for enforcement besides filing a civil lawsuit, since he suddenly can't understand any language, we are trying to take the matter into our own hands. Every time he goes out to sit in his truck to listen to his music, we play our car alarm. If we can't have peace in our house and a calm dog, he can't enjoy his music. It's actually been successful. He stops within a couple minutes. Today, as soon as he started playing his music, we started up our car alarm, and his girlfriend shouted, "Oh my God, shut up!" at us before speeding off. I guess they can speak English now. We're moving in a month, thankfully. Edit for wording. I'm just really confused about why the police won't do anything about it, just because, I guess it's just not their problem now. I don't understand how that works, but okay. Maybe the customer is always right. I found this sub because of my boy r/, hi Hugo, so I think this belongs here. I used to work at a place that sold burgers and ice cream. I quit because the manager had a favoritism problem, but that's a different story. I was a cook, and our restaurant was unique in the fact that the kitchen was openly visible to the customers, as we had a big counter that we called out people's orders and delivered food at. This was a magnet for entitled people. Let's just say no one came back to the counter to compliment the food. People would complain about the food to my face often. One day, after a couple months of starting work, an older couple came in and ordered a single order of small cheese curds. Technically, we were supposed to level off a small measuring cup of curds before cooking them, but I found the small cup for the curds way too small, so I usually just eyeballed it. I saw this couple had only ordered a small to split between the two of them, so I, being a nice, benevolent minimum wage burger flipper, gave them some extra. I called the couple's number and they came to the counter. The lady, who will be called Karen, looked at the basket of curds like it was something vile and said, "Is this the small size?" I explained to her that it wasn't quite a large, but I did top her off with a little extra. Karen looked at me like I had spit in the food and said, "Actually, we would like this to go now." Like she didn't want to be in the restaurant anymore. I put the food in a to-go bag, and as the couple was leaving, she sneered at me, her voice oozing sarcasm. "Have a great night." I told my coworker what happened and that I was confused, and he told me that sometimes people get offended when given more food than they ordered, like they were being pitied or something. I shrugged it off and continued work as usual. Enter the PettyRevenge. A few months later, I was working a late shift when I saw a single order of cheese curds pop up on the screen. I looked into the dining area, and sure enough, it was the same couple. So I did what any good employee would do. I filled the order. I took the measuring cup and scooped the curds in, and then proceeded to level it off perfectly. I took extra care in making sure that it was exactly a small cheese curds. Once cooked, there were only like 7 cheese curds to split between 2 people. I called out the order number and gave them the tray with my best smile. "Enjoy!" The couple looked at the pitiful amount of curds in the basket. Karen gave a sheepish "thanks," and they took the tray to a table. I watched for the next few minutes as the couple finished the tray very quickly and just sort of sat there for a while after. I giggled to myself the whole time. I know it's not that glamorous or interesting, but I think it was pretty petty, and it felt good to stand up for myself a bit. After all, the customer is always right. I don't understand being insulted and angry about getting a little extra. That doesn't make sense to me, but okay. People refused to turn off their trashy, explicit music, so they suffered the wrath of my French horn practice. For the past week and a bit, one of the neighbors in an adjacent garden to ours has been blasting fully explicit, violent, and offensive music in their garden every day at max volume. Me and several of my neighbors, most of my neighborhood is Pakistani, so swearing and explicit songs are a big deal that they don't want their kids hearing, have put notes through their door, asked them in person, and someone even asked their landlord to have them please at least turn down the music. No response, they just ignored us, and they have different visitors every single day during lockdown, which annoys me even more. For reference of how loud it was, my house is 20 meters from theirs, and I could still feel the bass on the 3rd floor at the opposite side of the house. Enact PettyRevenge. Now, I have an ARSM performance diploma for French horn, which comes with a rather impressive set of lugs. The last few times they've come out to blare music, they've had to battle with Strauss, Mozart, Glier, and Schumann. First time I started playing, I got heckled by them for the first 10 minutes, telling me to shut up and go away. I did not shut up and go away. Every time they complained, I got louder. Screw written dynamics. By the end of the 1 hour, 30-minute practice, they had gone inside. I repeated this process 2 more times before they got the message and turned their music down. Mission success. I mean, I feel like it would have been better if you weren't good at French horn, because then it would have sounded horrible, but I mean, at least your other neighbors probably appreciated some decent music for once. Either way, I'm glad it worked out. Boss replaced me with unpaid labor, so I wrecked what I was working on for the company. Throwaway for obvious reasons. My job was running a company's Instagram account, content creation and planning, influencer outreach, responding to DMs and comments, etc. A little over 2 weeks ago, the company decided to replace me with my boss's 15-year-old niece and give her volunteer hours instead of paying me. I didn't even get any notification from my boss that I was getting fired, and only found out about this after seeing my boss tell her niece that she'd be replacing me in a DM sent from the company Instagram. They may have fired me, but I can still access the account. For those who don't know, engagement rate determines everything on Instagram. Posts with higher engagement get shown higher in people's feeds and explore pages, and posts with high engagement get shown in the top posts section of hashtags the photo was tagged with, among other things. So I've been going to the account and quietly removing 5 to 10 followers per day. With little to no new followers each day, and the number of active followers dropping due to both my action and the people legitimately unfollowing by themselves, the engagement rate has gone down from a little above average for a small account, 6 to 7%, to almost nothing less than 1%. They also got hit with a takedown notice after boss's niece stole an influencer's picture and tried to pass it off as her own on the company account. Good luck recovering! That was a yikes move on their part. I don't know if I really agree with you, like, accessing their account illegally now, even though you technically can. Because it sounds like she would have probably just ran it into the ground anyway without understanding copyright, but, you know. Don't care about the neighborhood and harass my family? Ecological warfare. My neighbors. What can I say about them? They're loud, obnoxious, and insanely disrespectful. My fiancé and I started noticing this last year when 2 trucks would park right behind our driveway. Since we both have cars, it's hard to pull out without going up on the sidewalk or our own lawn. It turned out to be their son's 2 cars. He moved one, refused to move the other because it wasn't his daily driver. They also had ungodly loud parties during quarantine late into the night. A couple of our neighbors have complained, but they've kind of just scoffed and been like, we're all in quarantine, nobody's working anyways. They've really had a super F-all attitude about everything. Back in March, my friend came to visit. She has a little Honda and she parked up on their grass. She didn't know any better and figured it was city grass. Not 5 minutes later, our neighbor came over and yelled at my fiancé, friend, and I for parking her massive car up on their lawn. She moved her car and things went on. We stayed out of our neighbor's way. That leads us to today. My fiancé recently got back surgery and can't lean down. He told me there was a dead mole in the driveway and asked me if I could grab it and toss it into the trash. I obliged and went to collect our deceased furry friend. Lo and behold, he was still alive and looking for his dark home. So I happily allowed him to return to his dirt house in our neighbor's yard. Godspeed, little mole. It's in the little things. Guy sitting on our seat gets thrown out with vomit all over him. This happened many years ago when I was a kid, about 3 to 4 years old. Well, I don't remember most of stuff that happened when I was 3 years old, but I remember this incident very well. My family and I was returning from a trip. We were on a train, and in India, trains tend to be crowded, especially around the time when office time was over and people are returning back to their homes. The sleeper trains in India have berths on which people can sleep. Me and my dad were together on the top berth as I wasn't feeling very well because the food I ate that afternoon did not agree with my stomach. So my seat at the bottom near the window was free and another guy was sitting on it. It's usual in India that people get season tickets in trains and sit on reserved seats as long as it was free, even though it is not legally acceptable. My father also takes season tickets to go to work. His office was far from home, even though he never used to sit on reserved seats, but he had friends who did, so he allowed the man who was sitting in my seat to continue, as it was not a burden for us, and he had places to be, and we didn't want to stay in the way of that. But later that night, my stomach started aching really badly, and I started having motion sickness and vomiting tendencies. So we decided to climb down and sit down near the window, so in case I vomited, I could puke outside the train and not make the insides messy. We climbed down and kindly asked a stranger to move from where he was sitting so that we could sit there, and offered him the top berth so that he would have a place to sit. And guess what? That guy flat out refused and argued that it was his seat. The nerve on that guy, sitting on what is clearly my seat, one which my father gave money for, and lying to our face that it was his seat. So my father took out his ticket and showed him that this seat belonged to us. He said that he also had the same seat, and it was our fault, and we have the wrong ticket. My father asked him to show the ticket, and he said that it was none of my dad's business, and that he will not be showing him anything. My dad argued with him for a little bit and told him I was sick and I might puke. The dude refused to give up his seat, not his by law, to a sick kid. What a jerk. My dad stopped after a while because he saw I was getting more uncomfortable and my stomach pain had increased. We sit next to the man who is still sitting at the window seat. After some time, I grew really uneasy and I could feel that I was about to throw up. If I wanted to, I could have leaned over this man and puked out of the window, but I decided, F it. This man has been nothing but a jerk to us since the beginning. I made my decision and deliberately turned towards him and puked all over him. As a reflex, he got up looking absolutely enraged, but before he could say anything, the ticket checker arrived to check the ticket. He sees the guy standing with vomit all over him and asked what happened, and my dad explained about the refusing to give up the seat, which was ours, and he was trying so desperately to hold in a laugh while saying this. The ticket checker asked the guy whether he could see his ticket, and it turns out he didn't even have a season ticket or any ticket whatsoever. He was riding this train for free. So the ticket checker kicked him out at the next station, and I looked out of the train to see the man covered in vomit standing in an empty station far from where he wanted to be at night. We could do nothing but laugh. If you're doing illegal things, you might not want to be a jerk and draw attention to yourself. Anyway, that is going to end today's video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and drop a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Really quickly, I'd like to thank my patrons. Up on the screen, you should see my face palmers and my crazy K's. Thank you all so much for supporting me in that way. If you're interested in becoming a patron, checking out the original post from today's video, or sending me an email for possible inclusion in a future video, all of that information is in the description box, so be sure to check it out. And I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!